Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Tyrone Williams of Madison is a Democratic candidate in the 76th Assembly District. The primary is August 11th. Mr. Williams, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as an African-American police officer for Madison, you have a unique perspective on the whole subject of police reforms, that very timely issue. But when I look at your campaign materials on the internet, your package of reforms seems to go beyond Governor Evers' package. For example, you want 8 hours of bias training for police trainees, no foot or vehicle pursuits if they pose safety risks. You want documentation use of force incidents. You want body cameras in all patrol officers by 2023. Can you talk to us about, number one, do you support the governor's proposals and your own ideas, sir?
Yeah. I, of course, support Governor Evers' proposals, and I do believe that if I was to be elected to the legislature, I can provide additional experience and become a real asset to the legislature, ensuring that we are continuing to provide equitable opportunities for everyone involved and working in partnership, not only with law enforcement, but with the community, especially those who are impacted the most by police investigations and involvement. And I came across these reforms and developed them through my own personal experiences. One, as someone who has been living in Madison since my freshman year of high school and coming from the south side of Chicago, I have that unique perspective of seeing a great difference in comparing and contrasting the south side of Chicago to all of the opportunities that I was granted here in Madison through people who invested in me and brought me up. And I do have personal experiences with the police. And I'm sure, as you read in that article, one of those examples was a form of police abuse of power, and with a student who was cooperative, and kind of the impact and trauma that has on communities, and that can be a lasting impact. And it's through my experience as a police officer working here in Madison for almost 6 years now, I am using equitable mindset and really focusing on the outcomes, but also me having a full understanding of the state statutes and how they're used and kind of the greater purpose as to why they're in place, and understanding the systemic, not only systemic racism in which police is based off of, but kind of the systemic internal aspects into how we can really do reform within our current parameters here in Wisconsin.
Well, I do have a list of questions on specific issues, but I just have a quick follow-up. What's your takeaway, your lessons from the recent Madison protests, sir, that unfortunately led to property damage?
Yeah, I fully support the First Amendment and everyone's right to protest their government peacefully. And I always work to take a step back and try to understand why it is that people are protesting, and how can we address those issues. And one of those is addressing the great need for police reform. And using my experiences, I feel I have that skill set and the mindset and the knowledge to really push that reform based on my experiences.
Okay, understand. Okay, let's go to some specific issues. The governor has warned that because of the pandemic, state government tax collections could be $2 billion with a B lower than expected. If you're a member of the assembly, it seems to me you have a difficult choice. You cut spending, or do you raise taxes and fees, sir?
Yeah, due to the unprecedented pandemic that's related to COVID-19, Wisconsin's going to be faced with a shortfall for the upcoming years. And from what I've seen, our leaders we'll have to make some tough choices to address those fundings for our future, for critical resources that will no doubt have an impact on our Wisconsin families, our youth, and our working class. And so while we may not fully know the full impact of the windfall until later in the fall, we have to be prepared now to create the best frameworks moving forward. And we can't continue to wait and miss on fully taking advantage of critical resources like the CARES Act. And that's why it's important that we have people in positions of leadership in the legislature that will work for the best interests of our communities and work to provide equitable solutions for all people, not just some. And that's my mindset. My mindset is to prioritize the quality of life for our communities, especially the most vulnerable and underserved populations. And we need to be creative and equitable in our approach. And if elected, I'll be that advocate and hold the GOP accountable each and every day until effective change is made.
Well, what's your position on legalizing both medical and recreational marijuana, sir?
Okay, for enunciation purposes, legalize weed. And oh man, as an officer, I definitely see and understand the benefits of legalized marijuana. And through my background in financial literacy and workforce development, I will work to continue to create pathways that are equitable for those who have been traditionally overlooked, underserved, and also criminalized for marijuana-related issues. And for business owners, entrepreneurs of color is what we need in the legalized marijuana business. And I will put sustainable measures in place to ensure that everyone gets a fair opportunity to succeed through grants, through low-interest loans, financial education, and also continued mentorship for continued business development. And, we can't have the same small pot of people financially benefiting from innovative measures while the poor and working class continue to be left out. And, again, with that background in financial literacy and workforce development, that's my skill set. I have been working in Madison for years and working to identify resources and build bridges and connect our community here in Madison, our youth, our women and entrepreneurs to resources and ensuring that they're supported to make sure that they can get a piece of the pie.
Okay. When you identify criminal justice reform as one of your top topics, do you believe that we could reduce the prison populations without jeopardizing public safety, sir?
Yes. One of my reforms. Oh, go ahead.
No, my question was then who could be let out without jeopardizing public safety, sir?
Okay. Yeah. Through the reforms that I had presented in my blog and also the article that was posted on the Capital Times, one of my referrals was to focus on alternative forms of incarceration, but also reducing in-person custody arrests for low-level misdemeanors that are nonviolent in nature, and also through status offenses like driver's license status and vehicle registration. We should be making a concerted effort to reduce the jail population and allow people to have alternative forms of restorative justice forms to allow them to connect further with the community and hold themselves accountable and have the community hold each other accountable in an equitable way that's fruitful for all involved to reduce recidivism in our communities.
Okay. New subject. Who should draw the next set of congressional and legislative district lines? The Constitution, as you know, says the party in power in the Capitol. The governor has recommended a People's Commission that would draw the lines and then recommend that they be enacted to lawmakers. Which is the better model, sir?
Yeah, I believe that a nonpartisan committee should be in charge with drawing our district boundaries for the legislature. What we've seen time and time again is that when partisan parties are involved with drawing these boundaries, it's just a form of voter repression and ways to continue to keep power to the majority party. And the other side, the GOP, has been pushing that agenda. And the result of that is that they continue to work on behalf of their own self-interest and the interests of their benefactors, other than the interests of the people. And we need to continue to work and hold them accountable so that people can have a fair chance to vote who they think should be empowered, not what the parties in the majority will set for them.
Okay, the issue of property taxes. Wisconsin has some of the highest property taxes in the nation, which is why there are limits or caps on what school districts and local governments can levy in property taxes, although referendums, if passed, allow them to exceed those limits. If you're a member of the Assembly, would you continue to support caps, or would you recommend doing away with them, sir?
Yeah, thank you. So funding for our critical resources is going to be a challenge for our leadership, as funding will be down across the state and in a variety of sectors due to the pandemic related to COVID-19. And so as we discuss measures moving forward, it's important that we take advantage of every opportunity that's available to us. One example is that Governor Evers had recently dispersed $46.6 million to K-12 public schools through funding from the CARES Act from the federal government. And that was to help alleviate losses and to assist in, our transition as we move towards remote learning models for the upcoming school year. And so every school district across the state has their own unique strengths and challenges when it comes to the pandemic and also the quality of resources that's available to them. And I believe it's critical that we work in partnership with leaders in education, but also with the communities who are impacted the most to determine the best frameworks moving forward for the benefit of our youth.
Follow up on property taxes. To ease the reliance of local governments on property taxes, is it time to explore alternative sources of revenue? For example, expanding the 5% state sales tax to products and services that are now exempt, or even giving local governments the ability to levy a half-cent local option sales tax, which only county governments can now do. Is it time to give local governments more revenue options?
Yes. So we have to get creative with identifying and implementing sustainable models for revenue. Continuing to increase the tax burdens for the working class and people with fixed income is not an effective long-term solution, and it actually exacerbates the income divide between the top percentiles of income earners and everybody else. So I do support using a progressive tax model, and we have to break away from the small number of wealthy and well-connected individuals who have rigged the system for their own benefit. And I will push for progressive change by legalizing marijuana, as I mentioned earlier. In 2019, the state of Colorado had earned over $300 million solely from marijuana tax fees and taxes and fees alone. Mm-hmm. So, the GOP has proven again and again that, they're not willing to take advantage of the opportunities that will benefit that will be a benefit for our people. So let's legalize weed. Let's reinvest that massive revenue back into our communities, back into our schools and infrastructure. So, the GOP won't have to continue to prey upon the incomes of Wisconsin's working citizens.
Wisconsin can't find a stable way to pay for its highway system. The governor's recommended raising our gas tax, now 30.9 cents a gallon. That has not been increased in 10 years. Is raising the gas tax something you could support, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, like I said earlier, we have to get creative with how we're going to address, how we're going to fund our infrastructure that's, a critical need for a lot of communities. And so I support Governor Evers and his decision making. And, it's a matter of getting continued representation in the legislature so we can be a voice for those who are going to be impacted the most. So we're creating equitable frameworks to ensure that we are not continuing to exacerbate income issues with people with fixed income and our working class and our low-income communities.
The pandemic has hit the economy and healthcare providers that state government rely on. including the safety net programs like Medicaid, if you remember the Assembly voting on the next state budget, should hospitals have a higher priority than they may have in the current state budget?
All right. Well, thank you. My mouth is kind of dry.
That's fine. That's fine. Take your time. Hospitals, greater priority than they now have. They're on the front line of the pandemic war.
All right. So as COVID continues to progress and unemployment increases, so will the need for expanded coverage for Medicaid and other benefits. And so what we're seeing now is the results of decades of neglect from our unemployment system and our hospitals. People without coverage and benefits are suffering, and we have to install frameworks to ensure that everyone has access to affordable and accessible healthcare, regardless of insurance or employment status. And also by following our continued guidelines set for us by expert medical professionals to help reduce infection rates and ease the burdens on our hospital staff. Those things are very critical in that we are all in this together, and we have to continue to follow the guidelines set for us to help out our first responders and our medical professionals. And
business? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Next question. Should businesses that follow all prescribed COVID-19 health and safety practices, should they be immune from frivolous lawsuits?
All right. Like I said, we're all in this together, and our guidelines for how we respond to COVID-19 and the pandemic is ever changing. And it's almost on a weekly basis, we get new numbers on how COVID is rising and impacting our communities. And the data has shown that it's impacting communities at a disproportionate rate across the country. And so, again, it's on us as individuals to follow the guidelines set to us by medical experts and the professionals, and follow, social distancing guidelines, wearing our masks, and stand 6 feet apart. That's the first and foremost, the most important step for us to ensuring that we are protecting ourselves and everyone else.
Mr. Williams, when I interviewed candidates for the legislature from Madison and the Dane County area, some of them have taken a position on the Air Force decisions to bring the new F-35 jets to Truax Field. Do you have a position on that, sir?
So, growing up, I grew up on the north side. I attended Madison East High School, and I know and have grown up with, and as a police officer, I continue to work in communities on the north side, near east side, and all the residential areas that are around the airport. And what our data has shown, and it's proven, that the waterways around MATC Truax are currently contaminated. And so my focus is that we have to re-examine how we talk about Black and brown bodies in terms of pushing white community agendas. And my focus is the now, and how are we going to focus on how we can find solutions for the people of color who are suffering and with contaminated drinking waters. The Northside well was shut down due to contamination levels. So people are currently suffering. People are living in low-income neighborhoods with absentee landlords. People are not getting the proper infrastructure that the rest of the community is getting, as far as road construction and proper resources to live a high quality of life. So my solution is to focus on the people who are suffering now, and then we can focus on remediating those areas and putting in sustainable measures to prevent further decay and erosion to our environment and community.
Okay, new subject. When local government want to authorize or approve major public works projects, should there be bidding standards and requirements giving preferences to Wisconsin companies. And let me give you a little background. A study found that in 2015, out-of-state contractors were awarded $72 million in contracts for some of these local government projects. That number, 72, more than doubled to $146 million in 2018. So should local governments be give a preference to Wisconsin companies?
As someone who is a benefactor of investing locally in terms of workforce development with those who have invested in me and developed me in the community that I serve, I fully support focusing on Wisconsin-based businesses to develop them and bolster our workforce to keep and maintain our talents and businesses here in state, and continuing to grow our economy and use Wisconsin dollars to bring back into the Wisconsin-based communities. That's something that's very important to me with my background in workforce development and how I've led employment initiatives in our Madison high schools, providing underserved youth with career opportunities, mentorship, and guidance, as well as making sure that they have the financial tools and knowledge to avoid pitfalls in life. I think that it's important that we have a well-rounded approach in working in partnership with the community, with employers, and with the government to ensure that we are supporting and creating equitable pathways for our youth, for our women and communities of color to break into emerging economies, and not only as employees, but as business owners and entrepreneurs.
Okay, then the final question. The 76th is open seat, lots of candidates. Why are you the most qualified candidate, sir?
Community. I am, I grew up here. I've been in this community since my freshman year of high school, and I've been intentional with living, serving, and working all in the District 76 on the Madison's downtown north and east sides. This is where my family is. My parents are educators in the school district and working in schools on the north and east sides. And there are tons of community members in our community centers, in our grassroots organizations who have invested in me and built me up to who I am. And I want to continue to bring that full circle and continue to build the roadmap for the next generation and create places for our youth and for our emerging leaders to get into positions and continue to continue representation for our Dane County area. I'm the only candidate with firsthand expert knowledge and experience in our critical issues that are not only facing Wisconsin, but our country. I'm a Black police officer. I've been pushing for police reform for years now and doing policy work with local organizations, colleges, universities, and nonprofits, social services, as well as law enforcement to reduce disparities in those organizations. I own a financial literacy company, and I have been working to provide financial tools to underserved communities to ensure that they are avoiding roadblocks and pitfalls in their lives. And I have firsthand knowledge and understanding our system here in Wisconsin and the greater purpose for our laws and what needs to be changed and what needs to be reformed to have that equitable mindset and equitable solutions for our communities who are underserved and overlooked.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tyrone Williams is a Democratic candidate in the 76th Assembly District. He's from Madison, and the primary is August 11th. Tyrone, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure. You have a great day and you stay safe.
Thank you. And you too, sir. Thank you.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.